We can go ahead and get started. Jim, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off here.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you and welcome for thank you for attending. Welcome to our telecast here regarding the Prolon product. This is a plug-and-play DDC product. I'd like to introduce Daniel Kerwin from Prolon. He's the business manager, and Katie, she's from Kelly, associated with Control Consultants. Katie Campbell. So we're here today for the Prolon product to introduce it to you. Hopefully you have, maybe you've run across it, maybe you're interested in using a plug and play product for DDC control. The Prolon product is not new. CCI has been repping them for a while, and Prolon has been out for a company for a long time. They have a cloud-based solution that I think you'll find is quite refreshing if you're used to dealing with the typical DDC that we have today that's complex and requires complex software and training. And in some cases it's not open source, and it may or may not have a cloud-based solution, but Prolon really rolls all of that up into one nice package, and I think you'll find it very refreshing. So with that, I'd like to introduce Daniel. Daniel's the business manager for Prolon. He's been with Prolon for a long, long time. He knows all the ins and outs, and he is my go-to guy when I have questions. So certainly he's the right person to be putting on this telecast. So with that, I will introduce you to him and let him take it from there. We're gonna have a Q&A question later. You can use the chat box there and shoot your questions at any time, but there is gonna be a Q&A section at the end. So if you want to hold off your questions then, or just roll them up into the Q&A window as we go along, as you think of them, and then we'll get through those at the end. We'll go through them all and discuss each point. So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel and let him take it from there.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jim. So my name is Daniel Kerwin. I'm the Business Development Manager at Prolon. And so today we'll be doing an introduction on the Prolon system. I have a little PowerPoint, which I'm going to show to you, which is going to cover the entire product offering. And then I'm going to jump onto our software so that we can take a look at how we can configure controllers and what the overall look of the system is. So without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, all right, very good. So I'll just start this. Okay. Actually, wait, hold on a sec. I'm just gonna change my screen because I'm working on two screens here. So just bear with me just for one moment. Just share the other screen. Okay, all right, very good. Okay, all right, so what is Prolon? Well, we are a controls manufacturer, and we really designed our system for the light commercial building market. And so we created a system which is available to all types of contractors, whether it's the mechanical contractors, the service contractors, all the way up to the controls DDC contractors as well. And so our system is configurable, it is not programmable. And once I get into the software, it will become a little bit more apparent. So why was Prolon developed? Well, first of all, in the light commercial building market, what we found is that when we're looking at the small to medium sized buildings, a lot of the controls vendors out there overlooked a lot of the types of applications which we can find in these smaller buildings. And so what a usual go-to solution would be programmable thermostats or Wi-Fi thermostats, well, that is able to accomplish basic functionalities, we are a bit more limited into what we are able to achieve. And then as soon as some of these smaller buildings needed something a little bit more heavyweight, where a basic thermostat might not be able to do the job, well then the project would usually have to go with a fully programmable system, which can be quite expensive to put in. And at least on the contractor side, we know that it can require a lot of specialized training. Also, on the end user side, sometimes the costs associated going with a fully programmable DDC system might not be in the budget for these smaller buildings. So a lot of these building owners are kind of caught between going with basic thermostats, which might not be able to do enough, or with the full DDC system, which is basically overkill for their small installation. But in that case, they don't really have a choice because there's not much else available at that point. So how is Prolon different from both of these situations? Well, number one is that we designed it to be very simple to understand while providing a lot of the same features which we'll find in a fully programmable DDC system. Everyone is welcome to sell, install, and service Prolon. And in terms of the entry cost, I know that that's a recurring question a lot. Well, it's a very low cost entry in that we don't, and there are no licensing fees or registration fees, anything like that. All that contractors really have to do is just attend a one-day training, and that's enough to get them on their feet. And the software is free, as well as all of the updates for all the controllers are free as well. So all you have to do is just buy the controllers and put it in, and we will support it for the life of the product. Also, we have excellent tech support as well. So if ever anybody is on a job and needs some help or needs some guidance, contractors can call us anytime, and we are there to help them out. Another feature in our system is that everything is backward and forwards compatible. So even though sometimes we come out with newer devices, which might be a newer generation, we still make sure that all previous generations are backwards compatible. So we are still able to update controllers which are no longer in production. So in terms of the types of buildings, so where do we see a lot of Prolon? Well, it's in that small to medium-sized commercial building space. So we're talking about office spaces, we're talking about banks, churches, schools, any kind of medical clinic, a dental clinic, car dealerships, any kind of commercial tenant space as well. So in terms of the square footage, I'd say the typical projects are up to maybe 80,000 square feet and smaller. We can go larger depending on the amount of devices needed. But just to keep you in mind that this system is really dedicated for the small to medium-sized buildings. So in terms of the applications, so we really tried to develop the full gamut of products, which will cover all the types of equipment which we'll find in these buildings. So first of all, we have devices for packaged rooftop units and air handlers. We have devices for heat pump units, split systems, and furnaces. And when we get into the zoning aspect of things, whether it's a VAV zoning system or a VVT zoning, we are very strong on that side as well. When we get onto the onto the wet side of things, we have dedicated controllers to manage boiler systems, to manage chiller systems, as well as cooling towers. And a bit more on the specialty side of things, if ever there's any makeup air units or DOAS units, as well as HRVs, we are able to control those as well. We can do fan coils and unit ventilators, as well as any other kind of side loop in the building. We know that sometimes it's not always a dedicated piece of equipment, but it's more different kinds of systems, such as exhaust fans, lighting, or maybe there's some pumps which you want to control. Well, we are able to take control of these standalone elements as well. And then finally, there's our software, which is called Prolon Focus, which is completely free. And we also have mobile apps as well. So whether you are an Android user or an iPhone or iPad user, you can just go on the App Store and type in Prolon Focus and you will find it. So just to go over a few of these controllers. So on the zoning side of thing, we have a VAV controller right here, which has an embedded Belimo actuator on it, which is good for 45 inch-pounds, which is good for most dampers, which we find. We have different models, whether it's a pressure-dependent model or pressure-independent model. And we have a variety of different outputs, which can allow us to control any kind of peripherals, such as reheat coils, baseboards, zone valves. If ever we have a fan-powered box application as well. So no matter what the application is, we can usually take care of it with this controller right here. And something which I can say about all of Prolon controllers, not just the VAV, but everyone, is that every single one of them can be standalone or it can be networked. So if you want to start off with onesie, twosie replacements, you can do that. And then if you want to network it later on, you may do so. So what this allows this is that for certain projects, if ever doing a full retrofit or doing the full project all at once might not be in the cards because it might be too expensive. Well, maybe we can cut it up into different phases and then we can just connect everything as you go. So you can piecemeal projects one controller at a time. We have different wall sensors with these devices. So there's the entry-level T200. There's the mid-level T500, which has the digital display and the adjustment knob. And then there's the T1000, which that one has the digital display, and it actually has a touchpad on it. And what differentiates the T1000 a little bit more is that you are able to access the VAV settings from this wall module. So you can configure an entire VAV controller through the menus of the T1000. And just on this slide, we can see a few different color combinations. So just to give you an idea of different flavors. We also have a connected thermostat or a networked thermostat. So this is not a thermostat like a too heat, too cool to control a rooftop unit or anything, but it's more in case we want to do some averaging among different zones to be able to drive a unit. Or maybe there's one zone which doesn't have a damper, but we still want to control either a zone valve or maybe like a baseboard or maybe like a unit heater. I see a lot of these thermostats being installed in warehouses when we want to control some unit heaters, but we still want to be able to see those unit heaters on the network. So here's an example where we might use this thermostat. So in terms of the rooftop units, so our rooftop units fit really great for units up to 25 tons of cooling and smaller. So we're talking about the 5 tons, the 7.5s, the 10s, the 12s, and so on, all the way up to 25. So those ones work perfectly with our system. However, we are able to go larger. I'd say the larger end of the spectrum in terms of the units we can control tends to be around the 60-ton range, roughly. So when looking on the cooling side, we can do up to 4 stages of cooling. However, usually with the light commercial units, we only need 2 stages of cooling. We can also do modulated cooling. So if ever, perhaps it's not a packaged rooftop unit, but it's more of an air handler in a mechanical room with a chilled water valve, well, we can control a modulating chilled water valve. We can control the economizer for fresh air, and we also have a dedicated input for CO2 levels. So if we want to do a demand controlled ventilation or a DCV, we already have that embedded within the controller. On the heating side, it can be staged heating or it can be modulated heating. So no matter what the heating source of the unit is, we can control it. Out of the box, this controller is able to control static pressure as well. So if ever there's like a bypass damper or a variable frequency drive, we can take care of it. We have an embedded dehumidification sequence as well. And we can also take control of exhaust fans, whether they're following like a general schedule, or in case there's a little power exhaust within the unit to control building pressure. So all these components, we are able to handle it with our single rooftop controller right here. So going over a few of the other applications. So we have a humidity controller. So if ever we have a humidifier, which we want to control, and once again, this can be standalone or it can be networked. So if people just need a simple humidifier controller, we could achieve it with this one. We have a boiler controller. So this controller can handle up to 4 boiler stages with or without a mixing valve. Or in case we had 2 modulating boilers, we are able to control that as well. We handle the loop pumps as well, and the boiler stages, as well as the system pumps. We have a lead lag sequence in that we can rotate them after a specific amount of time. And we also have the failover safeties as well. So if ever we call one pump to turn on and then we don't have a proof or we don't have status, well, then the second pump will turn on. So all of this is already built into this controller. And in terms of the control strategies, well, we can either look to maintain a fixed set point, or we can reset it based off of outside air, or perhaps based off of occupancy. Now, this controller is not to replace internal controls of boilers, but it's more to enable and disable boilers and then let the internal factory controls take care of the rest. We have a chiller controller. So this device is for both air-cooled and water-cooled chillers, and I'd say that it mirrors very closely the boiler controller capabilities in that it can control up to 4 chiller stages. We can control 2 pumps as well with the same lead lag, rotation, and failover safety sequences. A little add-on with this one is that if we are controlling the pumps, we can control the VFDs on those pumps as well. For makeup air units, so in this case, in case the unit is 100% fresh air, we know that the sequences aren't quite the same. I've seen people trying to use a simple thermostat to control a makeup air, and we all know that that simply does not work. It needs its own dedicated sequence. So it comes with all the necessary interlocks in terms of the exhaust fans and the outside air damper and the fan status and so on. And once again, on the heating and on the cooling side, we can control it no matter what the heating or cooling sources are. We can also take control of the building pressure as well. So I've seen this in a lot of restaurants where there's a makeup air which is actively controlling the building pressure due to the exhaust fans in those restaurants. So we are able to manage that as well. Here's our heat pump controller, which can take care of either air sourced or water sourced heat pumps. It can control up to 2 compressors with additional supplemental heat if ever we needed it. And so if ever we have a building with a water loop going in it, and that water loop is feeding water sourced heat pumps, well, we can control the water loop temperature as well. If ever there's a little cooling tower system with a boiler, we are able to manage that as well. And then one of the final controllers is the Flex IO. This one doesn't have a specific application in mind. So this one, we can really configure it to do whatever we want it to do. So what it permits us to do is really to fill in all the gaps, which perhaps some of our other controllers might not be able to handle, or maybe there's not enough inputs or outputs. So here's where the Flex IO, it can come in as a possible expansion controller where it can give us more options. Or if we just want to control like some side loops, which might not be tied to any of the other pieces of equipment, here's where the Flex really starts to shine. I've also seen people use it simply as a monitoring station where people wanted to simply monitor different temperatures, different pressures, and so on, and they wanted to be alerted based on different conditions. So in terms of the overall architecture of everything, everything can be connected in a daisy chain, and we can put up to 127 devices on a single network. And then when we add on the network controller right there, as of that point, we're able to put our system on the internet, so we are able to access it remotely. And it is not just about having one, let's say one big unit controller and then just a lot of zones or anything like that. You can mix and match as much as you want. There's no limitation as to how many rooftops or how many zones per rooftop or how many boilers or chiller controllers. You can put as many as you want as long as we respect the 127 devices limit. And if ever you need more than that, well, I'd say we just set up a second network. So oftentimes I'll see people, let's say it's a fairly large building with 200 devices needed and it's spread across 2 floors. Well, then we suggest just do one system on one floor, and then the second floor will have its own system. So our last controller right here is our network controller. So this is the one which is required for any kind of remote access over the internet. It can also act as a central scheduling device as well. So it can store and distribute up to 16 separate schedules. You can share a single outside air temperature reading to all the devices. So instead of having to put an outside air sensor for every unit, we could just use one, and that is all we need. With this device, we can also do email alerts. So we can monitor up to 200 separate conditions. And then we set up a condition if ever one temperature gets too cold or if it gets too hot, we'd like to receive an email. So we are able to monitor all the points. And we also have a trending feature as well. So if we want to do some data logging to be able to monitor the performance of equipment, if we want to monitor different temperatures, pressures, or we want to know if there's a piece of equipment, whether it's on or off through its status. So here's where the data logging can be very useful. Okay, so here's just a quick view of our software, which I'm going to get into in just a moment. All the graphics are pre-made. So once you bring in an icon of a specific controller, all the graphics are pre-made. And as you make changes to the sequence, the graphics will automatically adapt to what you want. So it's a little bit different from the programmable DDC side, where the first step is the programming aspect. And then if the end user wants graphics, well, then that's a whole other set of labor hours. with Prolon, we are able to condense all of that all together so that as you're configuring the controller, the graphics are automatically adapting. Everything is very color coded. So here we have an example of 3 units. So if a unit is blue, it means it's cooling. If it's red, it means that it's heating. And green means that it's simply satisfied. So it is just ventilating at that point. And we can already see some information right there in terms of the supply temperature, outside temperature, and so on. We also have some pre-built panels. So I know that some people are used to making their own panels, which we have no problem with that, but we know that some contractors might not have the necessary contacts for that, or sometimes it can be quite expensive as well. So we have pre-built panels with any controller that you want in it. Everything comes pre-wired. It comes with isolation relays, with the wiring diagram. These are UL certified panels as well. So if you wanted like a rooftop controller ready to go in a panel, or a makeup air or a boiler, whatever you need, we have it. We've also added a panel with a display on it as well. So we know that sometimes sites, we've all seen that little dusty laptop in the mechanical room on a little table set up. Well, if we want to avoid that, we could put in one of our panels. It comes with a touch screen, and then with it, we are able to see everything, and we can access set points and then change configurations as well. We do have password protections as well, so we can avoid any people who should not be accessing it. So we are able to lock them out. And then if ever people wanted a combination of a controller, so let's say like a rooftop or a makeup air with a touch display on it as well, well, here's another panel which we offer, which is what we call the master panel right here. So, okay, and that's about it for the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm just going to close this right now. Okay. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my Focus software. I have a little demo board on my desk right here. So I'm just going to connect to it. In this case, I'll just continue as a guest, and I'll create a new project. Okay, so here's the general working space of our software. On the left-hand side, we can see all the different icons. So for example, we can see the zoning rooftop, zoning heat pump, hydronics, or makeup air. I could click on zone, and then here's our VAVs, our thermostats, and our single zone rooftop or single zone heat pump. And then I can go into the other category where we have humidity, boiler controller, water loop, the FlexIO, and the chiller. So on my demo board, I already have a rooftop controller. So I'm just going to drag and drop right here, and it's going to ask me for the address. So I'm just going to put address number 20. So here I can see that the rooftop pops up right away. I also have 2 VAV controllers on my demo board. So I could go onto zone and then drag and drop it in and then put the address, but we want to be quick and we want to be efficient with this. We are able to discover all of these zones automatically as long as they have already been addressed. So I can just right click here, and there's an option that says get list. So I just click on this right here. And there we go. So I can already see my 2 zones right here. So I can see the space temperature with my set points, what is the demand, as well as my damper position. And then on this other zone, basically the same things, but here I can see what the actual flow is. So this one is pressure independent and this one is pressure dependent. So if I were to, let's say I want to configure one of these devices, I just double click on it. And there we go. So here's the default view for a VAV controller. So we can see the actuator, temperature in the supply, our space temperature with our set points. And here we have our outputs. So I could, let's say I want to configure one of these aspects. I could do config damper. It brings me to the damper configuration page. So this is how we work with our software. It's all configurable menus. So there's no programming which has to be done. We just have to configure it and put in all the set points which we want. So for example, very common settings, what's the minimum position, what's our maximum position, what's the minimum increments, and so on and so forth. If ever, let's say we have some kind of reheat coil. So let's say I want to control a reheat coil with my digital output. I could just do config output digital, and then here at the bottom it's a special function. So I'll go for duct heater right here. I will press on apply, and then when I go back on the home page, so I can see that my duct heater graphic has appeared automatically. If ever you right click on an element, you're able to override it right here from the software. So I could say, I want this actuator to open to a 30% opening. And I'd also like to turn on my duct heater as well. So as you can see, it's just very easy to access the settings, do quick changes. So here's how we are able to really make a difference compared to a programmable side of things. It's really how fast, how much time are you going to spend on the configuration side. So we're on some projects on with some programmable systems, just all of the labor hours might count for 30 hours of labor or 40 hours of labor in terms of programming and graphics time. Well, with Prolon, we basically compress that all together, whereas you could achieve the exact same sequence with less than 5 hours. So at that point, it's a huge cost savings. If I go take a look at the other zone right here, so it's almost the same graphic, but we do see that it does have the flow sensor. So we know that it is the pressure independent version. And then I can just go onto that menu. And then here we can set what are the minimum CFM, maximum CFM with the K factor and the duct diameter for the balancing. All right. We are able to input set point limits as well. So if we want to lock people in within a certain range of set points, we can do that. Or if we want to give them a very wide range as well. So it really depends on the application. If I jump up onto the rooftop unit here, okay. So here's the graphics for the rooftop unit. So we can see the cooling coils, we can see the fan, my heat, a temperature in the supply, return outside. We also have the outside air damper, and here's a bypass damper with the static pressure. So once again, if we just want to configure this, I could do config cooling, for example, and we just have to choose what the configuration is. How many cooling stages do we have? What are the set points? We have a minimum on and minimum off times already embedded to prevent any kind of short cycling within the unit. If we go take a look at the fan menu right here, once again, I'm not going to go through all the menus with you, but usually just browsing through the menus, people can intuitively learn how to change things and how the controller is going to work from that point on. So in this case, we have a bypass damper, which would traditionally be seen in a zoning system, and more specifically a VVT zoning system. But nowadays, it is becoming much less prevalent, and so what we're seeing a lot more is variable frequency drives instead. So we are able to change that very quickly on our software just by doing config, edit display, pressure control mode. I won't choose bypass. I'll just choose a variable frequency drive right here. I will press on apply, go home, and then here's the VFD, which pops up automatically right there. Or in case we had another situation where it's just a constant volume unit, so there's no pressure control at all, so it's just constant volume, I can just disable that entirely, just to config, edit display, pressure control mode will be none, and I do not want to see my pressure sensor right here. I'll just hit on the apply button, and when I go back, well, now we have the graphic for the constant volume units. I'm just going to disconnect just for 1 second, just to show you one or two other controllers. I'll just hit the disconnect button. And let's say I wanted to bring in a boiler controller. So I'll just go on to the other, and I'll bring in a boiler controller, which I'll give it address, let's say number 9. So here's the default view of our boiler controller. So I could, let's say I wanted to change some of these parameters. I could do config boiler, and then here I can say, is it a staging boiler? Is it a boiler with a mixing valve? At this point, I just hit apply, and then I see that my valve pops up automatically. But let's say I've got more than one boiler. Well, then here we can say how many boilers with how many stages each. So perhaps I have 2 boilers with only 1 stage each. At that point, I'll have my 2 boilers pop up, and then we can choose either 3 or 4 boilers right here. And then we know that the graphic will automatically update right there. In terms of the temperature, we can choose either a fixed set point or any kind of reset right there. All right. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to connect onto our office. So I'm currently working from home, as has been the case for the past year, approximately. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to log on onto my profile. So like Jim mentioned, this software is now cloud-based as well. So when you log in, you are able to view all of your projects all at once, or basically see a list of your projects. So once you create a project, whether it's on your laptop or on your work computer or no matter where, and if you have the app, which is on your phone or on your tablet, everything is going to synchronize across all the devices. So this is very useful for contractors when they're on the job, perhaps with the laptop, and they set it up just because it's quicker and it's easier. But then since it synchronizes across all their devices, well, if ever they need to just view the project quickly and they don't have to pull out their laptop, they can just pull out their phone and then open the app, and then they're able to view everything from there. So I'll go to the Prolon Mirabel right here. So there we go. So here we're going to see all the colors start popping up. So this is a live site. It's about half an hour north of where I am. So I could double click on my zone, and then I can see what's going on. As we can see that I already have a little baseboard, which I had there. If I just take a look at the unit. All right, so here's the live rooftop unit in action at our building. So it's a little bit cool outside. We're at almost 50. I can see temperature in the supply is 72, return is 72 as well. And I can see that there's a little bit of heat going on. So as we can see, just very easy to manipulate and access in case we want to change any kind of set points or anything like that. And if we want to take this one step further, so in this case, let's say this is kind of a typical office setting, and maybe we want like a floor plans so that we can actually see where all the zones are. I can just do options, background. I can select a new background here. So here's just a sample background, which I got off the internet. So it takes the picture, so it must be a picture. It's not a PDF or a CAD. Any JPEG or PNG will do. And then I can resize it. So I can make it small or in one particular direction. So let's say that this is a pretty good size, and then we can just move these icons around as to where we want it to be right there. So very easy to access. So just to conclude, I know we're about at the end of the presentation, and we want to leave some time for some questions. So just a quick overview. So with Prolon, it is a control system which is really dedicated for the small to medium-sized commercial buildings. Mechanical and service contractors can use it. DDC contractors can use it as well when their programmable line might be a bit too expensive for what the budget is for a particular project. So it's just one more tool in the toolbox for them. Okay, so that's about it in terms of what I wanted to show you. Do we have any questions?
Yes, it looks like we do have some questions coming through, Daniel. If you don't mind, I'm going to also share my screen during this time. So real quick, everyone, I'm going to share screens so that way you have our contact information you can collect as we discuss these questions. As you can see here. So first question, actually, let's do this. We've got some questions coming through on chat. So let's look at the chat first. Alrighty, okay, so first question comes from Michael. Because this is a cloud-based, this is cloud-based, there would be no need for the customers to have a VPN set up to access remotely, correct?
Correct. So there are two ways of doing it. We can either go through like a static IP in case, and that was the best option. And in that case, the IT department can set up all the firewalls and so on, which they want to. We also offer an option called the cloud communication option. And so this is our own communication service. There are no fees or anything like that. And it is a fully protected communication protocol. So we don't have to worry about setting up any VPNs or anything like that.
Great. The next question is from Ron, and this must be a pretty common question that you're asked, Daniel, because this was a question that we had come in prior to the webinar. Can this system be integrated into a Niagara system such as a Jace 8000? And if so, what is the COM protocol?
Very good question. So quick answer is yes, it can be integrated. The Prolon system as a whole uses the Modbus RTU protocol. So I know that a lot of the Jaces out there, I believe the Jace 8000 already comes with a Modbus port. Maybe Jim can give us a bit more details on that.
Yes, it does. It's correct. The driver's already in there.
There we go. So our system is completely open protocol on the Modbus RTU. So you can simply connect it onto the Jace. Just make sure that the port is communicating Modbus, and then you're able to pull in all the points, and it's not just readable, but it's writable as well. So if ever you wanted to change settings through that separate front end, you could do that as well. And just one last point as well, even though our entire system uses Modbus, the VAV controllers and the VAV controllers alone can also communicate BACnet. So in case you were just looking at the VAV controllers themselves and nothing else, well, just know that the VAVs can also communicate BACnet.
Great, thank you for answering that. We do have two additional questions that came through earlier today. What do I have to do to be able to sell Prolon?
You have to call Jim. I'd say that's all you have to do. So we go through distributors, so we do not sell direct to any contractors, anything like that. So I'd say that the best thing you can do is get in contact with CCI. I'd say just to get the ball rolling on that, and then we can take a look at training options. Like I say, usually in a non-COVID era, we would regularly go to CCI and give trainings and so on and so forth. But now,
Soon.
since we're a bit more on the virtual side, well, we can set up a virtual training at any time to help you guys out.
Right. And I think we'll probably see more and more of these type of webinars pop up too, as well, to help accommodate for those changes that we see with COVID.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. So yes, we are here to help you implement the product. I mean, not only with, product selection, but also the ancillary devices, and you're going to need sensors and relays and valves and actuators, and then also control drawings. I mean, if you're comfortable with just putting it in as is, using factory wiring diagrams, or you want a complete cohesive set of control drawings that an installer can follow, that's what our CAD engineering department does. And Daniel mentioned they have the factory OEM panels with or without touchscreens, and that is a slam dunk. One part number, boom, there it is, ships, there it is, it's all done. Or, CCI does have our UL panel fab shop if you want something different, like maybe you've got, I don't know, the entire boiler room you've got chillers, boilers, cooling tower, whatever, and you want to put them all in one panel with a touchscreen, then we could make, custom panels for you as well. But yeah, we're here to assist. It's a fantastic product. I think, after dealing with many years being in the industry with many different manufacturers' products, this one is a breath of fresh air. And that cloud-based connectivity, you cannot beat that for security, ease of access, and it's free. There's a lot of cloud-based things that are out there, but when they go into the commercial side, you got to pay by device. But Prolon's is free. So outstanding selection of features, I think.
Great, thank you for that. And it looks like we had a question come in on Q&A. Alfred asked, what is the minimum size building or number of pieces of equipment that can make this cost effective?
Well, I'd say that's a bit harder to answer, but when you're looking at the small to medium-sized commercial building market, what we've seen with a lot of the programmable systems, so we know that a lot of the DDC systems, I mean, these are very high-end with a lot of horsepower, these systems, and so we can control very large buildings and very complex sequences. However, when we get into the smaller spaces, we see a lot of these exact same systems going into these smaller into these smaller buildings. And so a lot of the times it is just frankly overkill. So you're basically doing your backyard gardening with a tractor, basically at that point. So
the combine.
Yeah, exactly. So with Prolon, it's a smaller system designed for smaller applications, and so I'd say there's no minimum amount of the devices, because when we're looking on the programmable side of things, well, we know that there's all the costly labor hours, which is associated with the programming time, and if they need graphics, well, then that's going to be included as well. So like I mentioned before during my presentation, with Prolon, we're able to condense all those labor hours, whereas with the DDC system, it might take 10 hours or 20 hours, whereas with Prolon, you can put this in the hands of a lower level technician, and they are able to take off with this. So you don't always need the the programmer employee to be able to configure our system.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there too. I can tell you that most cloud-based solutions are very good at doing rooftops and maybe a zone of heat here or there. But if there's anything in the mechanical room of the building, if the building is a mechanical room, no, you're not going to get that to the cloud. Not with a typical thermostat solution or anything else. That's when you need a controller that can handle what's in the mechanical room, plus the rooftops or air handlers or fan coils, and then take the whole thing to the cloud. So that's the real difference for me. I can sell you cloud-based thermostats all day long, but they only are thermostats. So anything else, if it's zoning system, boiler, chiller, heat pump loops, any of that, nope, not going to the cloud unless you use Prolon.
Thank you. Thank you,
That fair
guys.
amount, actually.
And I see, Jim,
Real-
you've actually gone in and answered the question, but Alfred had built off of that too, saying, are the points red right over BACnet as well? And you
Yeah.
answered, yes, sir. So they are. As
Yeah, so
other-
you can the protocol, the Modbus RU and Modbus TCP, if you're connecting it through the gateway or through firewall or something, those are read write with Niagara. All the registers are right on the Prolon website, so you can just build one template device in Niagara and boom, replicate. And if you're going to use just the VAVs, just as a VAV standalone solution, and you flip the dip switch to BACnet, yeah, it's read write just like any other VAV controller. But yeah, to reiterate about the what size building, I think that's the real differentiator. There's a lot of this is an inclusive SIS solution, so they have everything covered, whereas some of these other systems there might be cloud, might offer some cloud connectivity, just do not do everything. They only do little pieces of what you might find in typical buildings, but not the whole package.
That's right. And also just kind of big picture, this is from our experience. When you compare, let's say, the price to put in and install a Prolon system, when compared to a larger DDC programmable system, Prolon will usually be probably about in between 25 to 40% less expensive than the large programmable system. So just to give you an overall idea that in some cases for the end user, and they could be looking at almost half the cost using a Prolon system, and you'll get all the same bells and whistles, you'll get all the same sequences for about half the cost compared to a fully programmable system.
I would say even more, to expand on that, I would say more because like I said, these systems today that are, the full DDC systems that require specialized software and programming and training and licenses and whatnot, those, very few of them have cloud solutions. And if it does have a cloud solution, it requires a significant amount of setup. It's not just click a button and there it is. And certainly even once that's done, the ability to configure that system right from your phone while sitting in a hot tub or something is like, you're not going to even find that even on those systems. Whereas here, like Daniel says, you can either use the software on your laptop or you can use it on your phone. And once it's cloud connected, man, you can make changes to controllers anywhere. Pull over the side of the road and do it there. It's really pretty impressive, I guess, in my view.
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions coming through. We have about 2 minutes remaining. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to turn it over to Jim to close us out. I thank you, gentlemen, very much for walking us through this today and answering the questions that have come through. If something comes to mind after we depart today, you guys, as you can see here on the screen, there's ways to contact us. Jim at CCI is more than happy to assist you directly, I'm sure. So Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you to close us out for the day. And thank you, Daniel, for your time today.
Thank you.
Oh, we got a question real quick, Michael, real quick. So sorry. we can contact CCI for training on this product. Can we contact CCI for training on this product?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My email, even our general inbox, if you don't have my email, it's jsteiber@controlconsultantsinc.com. And yeah, shoot me whatever you got, ping me whatever you need, and we'll make it happen. That's what we do all day long.
Okay, perfect. And then Alfred, real quick, are there different tiers of user account credentials so low level people are not changing settings?
Yes, great question. And yes, there is. That was one of my first questions when I first started using it. It seems super powerful, but I'm like, I don't want to give this to the principal of the school or something, because they'll be in there. Yeah, so yes, you can filter out what they can see and get to and all of that. Yeah, they've got that part covered as well.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think those were the last questions that came through just now. So Jim, if you don't mind, take it away.
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to thank you guys, both you and Daniel, for putting this on and hosting it. And I would like to thank all of our customers for taking the time to attend. I mean, that's exceptional. I know everyone's very busy, especially this time of year. But thank you very much for attending. And like I said, we are here to assist. So anytime you need anything, please contact myself or anyone at CCI, and we'll be happy to assist you. Look forward for more more training and more info and webinars coming soon.
Absolutely. And you can actually check our training opportunities on controlconsultants.com. So check out the section there. There's actually a banner on the home page that you can click to, and it links to all the upcoming trainings for this year. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Jim, you look like you had something. You had one last thing to say.
And we are, just as an FYI for you folks that might want to have a public demo that you can show customers. CCI is going to, we're redoing all of the our IT infrastructure for our engineering side of the house, and we are going to have a live, fully loaded bells and whistles Prolon system that will be a live public demo that's designed specifically for people to go to and show, kick tires and kind of show their customers. So look for that in the future as well, very soon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. That concludes today's webinar. I thank these gentlemen for their time, and I thank you for your time. And that pretty much closes us out. So thank you, everyone. You are dismissed.